Okay, guys, after a while and people asking for more tutorials, I am finally back in the studio. We've just moved from Austin to Colorado, and I've just set up my new studio. I'm ready to start creating some new videos for you guys, and hopefully these will be helpful. Today, what we're going to be doing is creating a small table in SketchUp. I've done the video with the room in the past, but we haven't populated it with any furniture yet. We're going to create a table today that will illustrate the concepts of something called components. Basically, if you have 4 legs of a table, each one of those legs of the table can become a component. So if you maybe increase the size of one, it increases the sizes of all of them. So we'll start out by launching a browser. I will also mention that I'm using Chrome. I'm on a Mac, so I tend to use Safari for everything, but Chrome is going to work better with SketchUp. So go ahead and launch Chrome. If you don't have it, be sure and download it. Now, when we get to the Trimble page with SketchUp, we're looking over here for this navigation item that says Products. We'll click on that, and we're looking over here for the different offerings. We're going to be using SketchUp Free today, but I might also point out that they've recently dropped something called SketchUp Go, which is a version of SketchUp that works on the iPad. It's actually pretty cool. But today we'll be working with SketchUp Free. The concepts, however, should work with any of the other versions. So click on SketchUp Free to launch. And you'll see this page right here. We want to just start modeling. Now, I have logged in and have an account created with SketchUp. So if you don't have that, you might have to register before you start this project. Just stop the video, register, and then come back, and you'll end up in this area here. This is the home page for SketchUp. So you can see that any of the projects I was recently working on are going to be here in this main page. There's a Create New button at the top. We'll use that here in a moment. I'll first show you what the project is. The final project we'll be working on is a little table. Now, this table is something that we saw when we rented a beach house down at the Gulf Coast of Texas. What was nice about this is they created a whole set of furniture that was made out of 2x4s and 2x6s, and then these top boards are 1x4s. If you're joining us from outside the US, these actually refer to inches. Bear with us, you'll get a kick out of our Imperial measurement system. It's kind of a pain. But anyway, this is a very simple table. It is also buildable, so when we create this, we will use actual dimensions, and we will talk about the constructability of the project. On the first project, though, we're going to create a small table just so you can see the basics, and then we'll be jumping into this actual table. So with that, I'll go back over here. This little set of 3 lines is called the hamburger. So if you click on that, you can go home. And then you can use the Create New button. There was also under the hamburger a Create New, but we'll just use this one here. When I create new, I start out with a document that is untitled. We can go ahead and save that, give it a name. I'm going to save it under the SketchUp area. And let's make a new folder. So I'll click on the new folder button and just make this, let's say, class exercises. And I'm going to call it Colorado because I just moved in. That gives us a folder, so we're going to click on it, and then we can save our model name. Let's call this Simple Table. And then press Return. Now let's look at the interface of SketchUp here for just a moment, so everybody's on the same page. What you'll see when you launch it is you see a person standing here. You'll see a set of axes, so there's a red axis, a green axis, and then the blue vertical axis. On the left-hand side is our set of tools. On the right-hand side, we have some different preferences and views and things like that. We'll get into all of that. The main reason that we have this person here is so we can possibly get a feel for the scale of our project. If I select the man, so you'll see that I have my arrow selected, I click on him to select, you'll see that he has a blue box around him. That's called a bounding box. That shows us the space that he occupies within our 3D environment. Now, if we want to know more about him, let's go over here to the top button on the right and click it, and it will show us that his name is Ty. So this gives us information about the entity He's a component, which we'll talk more about, and his name is Ty. We'll leave him here for just a minute. Now, the next thing we want to do is maybe zoom in and out. Let's practice navigation. Whenever you navigate in SketchUp, I'm using a scroll wheel mouse, and so you can use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. If you don't have a scroll wheel mouse, you can go down here to the last icon on the left, and it will give you some different options with your magnifying glass. But again, I really recommend a scroll wheel mouse. It will make life a lot easier. If I hover over Ty and I scroll in with my mouse and scroll out, you'll see that it makes Ty larger and smaller. But let's go to the left-hand side and hover, and now use your scroll wheel and see what happens. It moves Ty over to the right. Let's zoom out again and then go to the right side, and let's zoom in and out and see what happens. In a way, I can navigate by where I zoom in and out on the screen. You can do it at the top and bottom as well. Let's use that knowledge to scroll in here at the origin, which is where all of those axes meet, and we're going to draw a rectangle. Since I'm in the orbit tool, you can see here it has a little orbit guy. You can click on that and choose the first option, and then I can click and drag. And what that does is it lets me navigate around Ty. You'll notice that Ty is flat though, so he's not a three-dimensional object. He just is always looking at us, but in effect, we're navigating around him. If I wanted to go side to side, I can hold the Shift key while using the orbit tool, and I can just click and drag side to side. You can navigate a little bit like that, and we'll go more into navigation as we work on the project. But I'll scroll in here to the origin, maybe navigate a little bit down, and I'm going to draw a rectangle. Over in our toolbar, you'll see that there is a rectangle tool. We'll click on that, and then choose the first option from the fan. Then I can click here on the origin and release the mouse button. We're not clicking and dragging. It's a click, release, and then move your mouse over, and you'll get this rubber banding effect. Look at the dimensions down in the lower right-hand corner. If you're from Europe or outside the US, you'll say, this is great. We've got millimeters here. We're actually going to switch that. So press the space bar to get out of the rectangle tool. I'm going to set a preference really quickly. If I go up to the hamburger and click on it, I can go to App Settings. Here under General, I'm going to choose my default template is architectural feet and inches. You could also do inches or decimal, whatever you want, but we'll use architectural feet and inches, and then click on the sorry about that. We'll click on the X over here and get out of there. However, if I draw the rectangle again, like that, it's still millimeters. Well, we just set it as a preference, so the next time we launch SketchUp, it's going to be correct, but we need to go fix it here in this particular document. Go over to this right-hand side and click on the I button, which is going to bring up the information or the model info. We want to choose a fractional inch mode here, and I'm just going to be designing to 1/8 of an inch. I also want to adjust the snap interval to be 1/8 of an inch, 1/8, and then press return. That sets the preference for this particular document. So even if you have a template set that is feet and inches, and then maybe I was working on some jewelry and needed millimeters, I could still work on a document that has different measurement types, and that's going to make it easier. So over here on the right, we're going to click this arrow to get rid of that, and then we're ready to draw. This time we're going to use a shortcut for the rectangle. The shortcut for rectangle is R for rectangle, pretty easy. The old versions of SketchUp, if you hovered over the tool, it would tell you what the shortcut is. This one does not. I will give you a cheat sheet that you can access down in the description that will tell you what all of these shortcuts are. But we'll press R, and you'll see that your cursor changes. We'll click on the origin, release the mouse button, and then move your cursor over, and that's going to show you that we have kind of this rectangle. But we are going to give it dimensions. For this particular leg of the table, we're going to use 1.5 inches. So type 1.5, comma, 1.5. You'll see that that is reflected down in the lower right-hand corner in the dimensions, then press return. That gives us a rectangle, or in this case, a square, that will become the leg of our table. Let's switch to a different tool. We want to use the orbit tool, which is down here at the bottom, but let's practice our key commands. Press O for orbit. When you move your cursor, you'll see it has the little arrows. When you click and drag, we're orbiting around this rectangle. And I want to zoom in on it, so I'll hover over and use my scroll wheel and zoom in. Now let's take one other look at this object in SketchUp. To do that, I need to go back to the Select tool, which is the first tool over here on the left. However, we're going to do this quite a bit. We need to go to the Select tool quickly, so we're pressing the spacebar. When you press the spacebar, you go back to kind of this base state, I guess, where you have the Select tool and nothing else is going on. If I click on this square once, you'll see that it gets a little dotted pattern. That says that the face of the object has been selected. Let's try and double click. When I double click, it adds the lines around it. So we've selected a face and also the edges. We can interact with these in SketchUp. There's one other option, which is to interact with the corners or the points that are between those edges. We won't do that here, but it's 3 different things you can interact with. Now, what can we do with this? I'm going to deselect, though, by clicking on the background, and now we don't have that selected. We're now going to turn this into something 3-dimensional. Go to the left-hand side, and we're looking for this box with an arrow. It's called the Push-Pull tool. Click on that, and you'll see it fans out here. Let's go ahead and select the first one. And you can guess what the keyboard shortcut is for push-pull. It's P. So if you hover over this object, you'll see that the center or the face turns dotted. Click on it, release the mouse, and just move up. Now I'd like this small leg to our table to be 18 inches tall. So I can type 18 and press return. Now it's out of the view. Let's use our scroll wheel and see if we can get out and get a good view of this. And just practice navigating a bit. If I wanted to orbit around it, I can press O for orbit. And then if I wanted to maybe move it over to the middle, I can add the Shift key. So I press Shift and then click and drag and move this side to side. Now let's do one more thing. I'm going to press the space bar because I want to select something. Now if I click once on the leg, you'll see that it has dots. If I double click on the leg, it adds the connected edges, which would be your face and then the edges. Let's try triple clicking. 1, 2, 3. And you'll see that we now have selected the entire 3-dimensional object. It's selected every face and every edge that was connected to it. Now we need to turn this into a component. So we'll right-click and then choose Make Component, and we'll call this Leg, and press Return. Now we have a table leg, but we need 4 total, and I also maybe have an idea of the size of the table I'm creating. Let's zoom out a little bit, but this time I'm going to use a command, which is Shift-Z. It's called Shift Extents, and it gets me a view of everything. Let's delete tie. If we click on tie and then press the delete or backspace key, he goes away. You can use Shift-Z again, and it fills the screen with our leg. We can zoom out a little bit, and then I'll show you one other trick. If you wanted to move this side to side, you could press the H key, which is the hand key or pan, click and drag it over to the side like this. Now for my table, I'm going to make a table that's 20 by 24. I need some guidelines. Thankfully, there is a tool in SketchUp, which is this little tape measure here. So I'll click on that and then choose the tape measure from the top. Since you are already a pro at SketchUp, you might be able to guess that the tape measure shortcut is T. This time, we're going to hover over the green line Click and then drag to the right, or actually click, release the mouse and move it over to the right. And then let's type 18 and press return. Then let's hover over the red line, click and release, move along the green axis, and let's say that this is 24. So press 24 and hit enter. And that gives us kind of some guidelines of where we want to put our legs. Now I need to make a copy. So to do that, I look over here at my toolbar and there's this little cross right here. That's the move tool. If I click on it, I have to choose from the little side fan. Or you could press the shortcut, which is M. Now to move this over, I want to hover over it and find a corner that's going to be appropriate for moving it into position. I want to move this corner of the leg to this corner over here. So I'm going to click on the corner and then look at the bottom. It shows me that I can move it, or if I tap Option, or on a PC it would be Alt, just tap it. Now when I click on that corner and move it, it moves a copy and it will snap to the intersection over here. Now let's make a copy. Since we've already got two legs, we could just select both of those and copy them over. Remember that if we need to get back to our selection arrow, we just press the space bar. In any program, if you hold down the Shift key and then click on multiple items, you can select multiple pieces. Then I want to make a copy and move it back here. Remember that the Move tool also serves to copy. So let's press M to switch to the Move tool. We need to tap Option or Alt to enable the duplicate function. And then let's choose this corner back here. Click it, move this over, and then let it snap at the intersection at the back. And that gives us 4 legs of a table. Why are we using components? What is cool about components? Let's press the space bar and then click on the background anywhere to get rid of the selection. Now, if I click one of these legs, it won't let me use push-pull, for example. If I press P and hover, you can see if you look closely, there's a little circle with a slash through it. I can't use push-pull. So let's go back to the selection tool by pressing space. Double-click on the leg, and you'll see that it gets this dotted line around it, which tells us that we are now opening this for editing. I can zoom in on the top if I'd like. Let's press the P for push-pull. And let's say that I want to make this 2 inches taller. If I hover over the top, you'll see it gets the little pattern at the top. Click and release, move up, press 2, and press return. You can see that by using a component, we can adjust the height of every leg at the same time. Let's try it again. Let's click, release, and then move down and type 5 and press return. For that functionality, components are absolutely great, and we're going to use that on our other furniture as well. To get out of this, you can either press the space bar and click on the background, or you could right-click and choose Close Component. But there are the legs of our table. Let's make a top. This will be pretty easy. You can use a couple different tools, but we'll use the rectangle in this case. Remember, to get to the rectangle, we press R to get the rectangle tool. I'm hovering over this corner over here on the leg where I click and release. And it's going to do some weird stuff, but you want to come across to the opposite corner and click again. What you'll see is there's a top here, but it's a single pixel thickness, and it has no thickness to it. Press the space bar, and let's click once on the center, and you can see we can select the face, or if we double click, we select the face and the edges. So this acts like everything else, except we drew it on top of the legs. We are not modifying the legs themselves, we're only affecting the top. That's because components group things together so we can interact with them individually. Let's deselect by clicking out on the background. And to give this thickness, we'll use the push-pull tool. So click Push-Pull and select the first option. Click and release, move up, and let's make this 1 inch thick. There's a nice thick top, and I pressed return at the end. Now, if I wanted to extend this out over the legs a little bit, I could also do that. Let's go in here. I'm zooming in on a leg, not over on the side, but actually on the leg. And I want to click this side here, click and move towards the right, and then type 0.5 and press return. Because we've used push-pull once, now if we go to this other edge and just double-click, it will extend it out a 1/2 inch as well. We need to orbit to the other side, so let's press O. Go around to this other corner. And if we need to, we can use the Shift key to move this into view. And let's go back to our push-pull tool, which we're going to use P for the shortcut. Double-click on the side. Double-click on the other side, and we've now created a table with a 1/2 inch overhang. The last step on this table is to group this into a single object. Let's press the space bar because we're going to select. Triple-click on the tabletop. Remember, if we double-click, we only get the top surface. Let's triple-click, right-click, and make it a component. And let's call this table top and press return. Now we have a tabletop, and then we have legs that are all individual components. Let's do one other thing. Let's select one of the legs and add the Shift key. Keep holding it while you select all of the legs. And let's make that a new component. Right-click, make a component, and we'll call this legs. The legs are now a single component, and we have the top. Now let's group them together because this is a table. So let's click on the top, hold the Shift key, and click once on the legs. Right-click and make this a component. And we'll call this table. Now this object, this model, is a single component, which is called table. So if I were to put this into, say, like a classroom or something, I could count the number of tables because I can count the components. How does this work? Well, let's go to the side and we'll look at this top button over here, which is the entity info, and you will see it counts the components. This selected component is the table. With the spacebar, press the spacebar, double click on this, and you can see we've opened it for editing. Select the top, and you will see we have one tabletop. Now, select the legs down here, and you'll see that we have one component called legs, but if we double click it and click on one of the legs, you'll see that we have 4 components, and they're called legs. So we can get in here and manually count what objects we have in our model. In SketchUp, the more expensive versions will actually create a materials list. But let's say that I was creating this table and I was doing it with the cheap and free version. I might have to go in and manually count things, but you can see here how we can do that pretty easily. To get out, this time let's use the right mouse button and choose Close Component. Then we have to do that again, Close Component, and now we're looking at our table. That is how you can create a very simple table in SketchUp. When we go to the next version of this tutorial, we'll be adding color, and we're going to make it a little bit more complex. Let's close the side panel here with the arrow, and we're going to do one last thing, which is to clean up a little bit. You can see that we created these guidelines earlier, and I'd like to get rid of them. Let's use another tool we haven't talked about, which is the eraser tool. You're going to press E for eraser, or click this second icon here. And then you can click and drag across these lines to erase them. Now, if you accidentally do that with the table, you erase the table, but it's easy to undo. You just do Command or Control Z, or you can use the arrows up here to go back. Let's save our table. It's going to ask us if we want to purge unused items and go ahead and tell it, yes, purge all. That's just if we have any stray objects. And in this case, I don't think we do. But press the O key to orbit around and admire your work. So a very simple table. In the next exercise, we're going to make this a lot more complex, but this is going to be the simple way that you can use something called components in your models with SketchUp. So if this tutorial has been helpful for you, please consider subscribing, and I'll be putting out a lot more of these to hopefully get you familiar with SketchUp.